Origins of Cyclops. The first X-Man, Scott Summers, possesses the mutant ability to fire powerful concussive blasts through his eyes that act as a portal to another dimension full of the force that makes up his optic blast. He is visually distinctive for the ruby quartz visor he wears to control his devastating power. A born leader, Cyclops succeeded his mentor Professor X to command the X-Men. Scott Summers is the eldest son of U.S. Air Force test pilot Major Christopher Summers and his wife, Catherine Ann. He was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, alongside his younger brother, Alex. When Scott was 12 years old, his family was flying home from a vacation when their private plane was attacked by a Shi'ar spacecraft. The attack destroyed all but one of their parachutes, which Catherine strapped to Scott while making him hold Alex. Catherine and Chris said their final goodbyes, pushing their boys out of the plane with the hope that they would survive. The plane exploded, presumably killing Scott's parents and causing the parachute to catch fire. Scott's mutant optic blasts manifested for the first time, and he used them to slow their descent, while shielding Alex from the landing with his own body. Though the boys survived, Scott suffered a head injury upon landing. This head injury caused Scott a slight amount of brain damage, affecting the portion of his brain that controlled his optic blasts. The brothers were hospitalized, both suffering from traumatic amnesia regarding the incident. They caught the attention of the villainous geneticist Mr. Sinister, who harbored an obsession for the Summers family. Sinister ran an orphanage, the state home for foundlings, in Omaha, Nebraska, under the guise of Michael Milbury. Knowing of Scott's mutant power, and believing that he had more potential than his brother, Sinister had Alex adopted to separate the two, rendering Scott emotionally vulnerable. One night, Scott awoke and accidentally destroyed the roof of the hospital with his power. Witnessing this, Sinister put Scott in a year-long coma. Upon recovering, Scott was placed in Sinister's orphanage and subjected to torturous experiments. Sinister placed mental blocks on Scott and took on the role of the orphan bully Nate, or Lefty, to torment him. He even murdered Scott's potential foster parents to keep him trapped at the orphanage. Sinister would ultimately fail in breaking Scott, however. As he matured, Scott began suffering severe headaches and eye strain as a result of his mutation. He was taken to an eye specialist in Washington, D.C. Through trial and error, the optometrist Nathan Masters Sinister under another alias found that ruby quartz was the only substance that both restrained Scott's optic blasts, while also easing the vision problems he suffered. He outfitted Scott with a pair of special ruby quartz glasses, which the young mutant would come to rely on for the rest of his life. The first X-Man, when he was 15 years old, Scott ran away from the orphanage after his power emerged in public. His mutant metabolism reached a critical point, and he released an uncontrollable optic blast that accidentally demolished a construction crane. The crane fell toward a crowd of bystanders, and Scott quickly used another blast to destroy the debris and save them. However, they feared his unusual ability and formed an angry mob. Scott escaped the crowd by fleeing on a freight train. He was then found by a mutant criminal named Jack Winters, who became his foster father. The physically abusive Jack wanted Scott to help him break into a nuclear power plant, where Jack's mutant abilities were triggered by radioactive material. Scott only agreed to help and fight off the guards because he knew that Jack would kill them if he didn't. Professor Charles Xavier had been tracking Scott with the help of the FBI, intervening to save him. Defeating Jack with Scott's aid, Xavier offered the boy the opportunity to become his first student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. Scott accepted the offer so Xavier could teach him how to control his mutant ability. Adopting the code name Cyclops, he became the first X-Man. Cyclops' code name originated from the specialized ruby quartz battle visor Professor X designed to help him control his destructive optic blasts. Cyclops never managed to gain full control of his power, but he finally had the means to use it with confidence. He soon met his new teammates, other mutants his age. Cyclops bonded very well with the group, who gave him the nickname Slim Summers due to his thin build. They formed the original 5 X-Men. Cyclops was gifted with the role of field leader by Professor X, and over the years, they formed a strong father-son bond. He would eventually become Xavier's most prized student, chosen to carry on his legacy for mutants. Magneto arrives on Utopia, having regained his mutant powers with the help of the High Evolutionary. The Master of Magnetism proclaims his respect for Cyclops' achievement in uniting mutant kind. Professor X assaults Magneto telepathically, unwilling to believe that his old friend is sincere in his attempts to make peace with the X-Men. Cyclops orders Charles to stand down, and later cautiously accepts Magneto as an X-Man. Cyclops later accepts Professor X's help in telepathically linking him with Emma's mind, in an attempt to free her from the sliver of the void which remained inside her after she defeated the Sentry. Inside Emma's mind, Cyclops finds a white room filled with various diamond figures, each representing a different aspect of her psyche. Emma's main consciousness approaches Cyclops, but as they begin discussing how to extract the void, all of the other aspects of Emma attack. Realizing that the figures are not actually a part of Emma's mind, Cyclops attacks back by using a mental version of his optic blast. The blast acts as a beacon to Emma, who finds Cyclops again. However, the void has plans of its own and moves to possess Cyclops. Emma is ejected from the telepathic link and back into the physical world, now able to leave her diamond form, while Cyclops remains unconscious. Emma reveals that the void has passed from her to Cyclops. Cyclops sits among the remains of the destroyed mansion, with a black mass hidden among the rubble. He is confronted by shadowy female figures who ask him why he didn't save them, and tell him he will never be the man he wants to be unless he lets the void in. Emma appears on the scene and destroys the figures. She and Cyclops attempt to leave, but the void grabs Cyclops and separates him from Emma. In the physical world, Scott screams in pain and Professor X tells Psylocke that if Cyclops wakes up before Emma, the void has taken over him and that she must kill him. In the meantime, the void is still trying to convince Scott to let it take control. Scott responds by shooting it with his optic blast. He is then seen in a white room which Emma cannot enter. Since they are in Scott's mind, he is in control. He makes it so that Emma cannot enter the room, much to her dismay, and tells her to trust him. The door of the room closes in front of Emma, who wakes up. Psylocke is about to kill Scott, but Emma tells her to give him a chance. Scott sits on the ground with a black box in front of him, and the void starts to engulf him. He holds up the box, and suddenly the void is trapped inside. Cyclops tells the void that he had been in a relationship with an extremely powerful telepath for years, and she taught him how to defend his mind. Scott wakes up to a relieved Emma, having trapped the void in his mind. Cyclops forms a powerful group of X-Men that he dubs the Extinction Team. The goal he sets for them is to prove that they are Earth's mightiest heroes, changing public perception of mutants into something the world needs to survive. They will also act as a deterrent against attacks on mutants, including those at Wolverine's new school. The team consists of Storm, Emma Frost, Magneto, Namor, Colossus, Danger, Magic, and Hope Summers. Their first mission is to deal with the resurrected Mr. Sinister and his plans with the dreaming Celestial. Sinister departs in the Celestial's head altered to resemble his face shortly after the team arrives on the scene, leaving them to fight with the many micro-celestials that its body is disintegrating into. Magneto acts as a surrogate nervous system for the Celestial's body, piecing it back together, though he is exhausting himself by doing so. After losing a diamond arm in the battle, Emma is forced to remain in her diamond form, unable to use her telepathy. Meanwhile, Sinister flies the Celestials' head to San Francisco's Fine Arts Museum to further his plan. Sinister utilizes the Celestials' cosmic power to release a massive amount of energy that reconstructs the museum into his own Sinister World's Fair, filled with clones of himself. Cyclops is contacted by Abigail Brand, who informs him that the Celestials are coming to Earth. As the team battles against Mr. Sinister's clones, he proposes a ceasefire and invites them into the museum to speak with him. The team senses a trap and prepare themselves, with Emma and Hope devising a trump card. Sinister reveals his plan for the Celestials to wipe out humanity, with the mutant race fighting his new Sinister species for supremacy of Earth. Sinister telepathically takes control of the team, but Emma is immune in her diamond form. Using a code word, Emma frees Hope from Sinister's control and she shoots him through the head. Sinister predicted this would happen, and as the team regains control of their minds they realize Sinister exists as a hive mind through his clones. Danger takes down all of the Sinister clones inside the palace, and the team goes to face Sinister outside. Sinister reveals that he is using Cyclops' mind as a blueprint for his new species. Emma abandons her diamond form and, using her intimate knowledge of Cyclops' mind, psionically defeats Sinister. Sinister appears in a new body, revealing that he has adapted from the weaknesses of his previous form. The dreaming Celestial's head returns to its body as Sinister levitates the museum away. Before shooting himself in the head, Sinister tells Scott that he will lose everything he cares about. Powers and abilities. Cyclops possesses the mutant ability to project powerful beams of a heatless, concussive force from his eyes, which act as extra-dimensional apertures to a non-Einsteinian universe where the endless concussive force resides. Cyclops constantly absorbs ambient sunlight into his body's cells, metabolizing the energy in order to open the apertures. Cyclops' mind generates a sonic field that is attuned to the same forces that maintain the apertures. This field envelopes his body, protecting him from his own power. Even the thin membranes of Cyclops' eyelids are sufficient to block the emission of energy, allowing him to contain power by simply closing his eyes. The synthetic ruby quartz crystals used in the lenses of Cyclops' sunglasses and visor are resonant to his mind's sonic field, making them the only substance that can effectively block his blasts. The width of Cyclops' optic blast is controlled by his mind's sonic field. As Cyclops focuses, the apertures in his eyes are altered to control the flow of energy and the power of the beam, which is filtered through his visor. The maximum force of Cyclops' blasts is unknown, but a commonly given description is that they can punch holes through mountains, and he has been shown rupturing steel plates and pulverizing solid rock. It has been stated that Cyclops uses only a fraction of his vast potential energy output. His more powerful optic blasts can demolish fully armored tanks, severely damage sentinels, and obliterate entire icebergs. Though the extra-dimensional energy supply of Cyclops' blasts is practically infinite, his own stamina is not. He can exhaust himself by projecting too much energy for a continuous rate, resulting in his blasts weakening in power. So long as Cyclops' sonic field is active, which is constant, there is the potential to emit energy, with the only limit being the mental fatigue of focusing for an extended period. Due to psychological trauma and a head injury, Cyclops is unable to shut off his optic blasts and must therefore wear ruby quartz lenses at all times to block the beams. Emma Frost revealed that the trauma of losing his family, and anxiety of hurting someone with his power, are primarily responsible for his lack of control. Mr. Sinister has claimed that Cyclops' eyes have become reliant on ruby quartz, making it harder for him to control the blasts on his own. After overcoming his past trauma, with some help from Emma, Cyclops gained control of his power for a period of time. He gradually began losing control, however, and had to revert back to using his special eyewear. Cyclops possesses an uncanny talent for spatial geometry, enhancing his observation of objects around him and the angles found between surfaces of these objects. This inborn talent grants him the ability to ricochet and/or reflect his optic blasts off objects in a trajectory to his liking. Cyclops has honed this intuitive spatial awareness through extensive training in the Danger Room, enhancing his accuracy in the use of his mutant power. He has been observed reflecting beams off of half a dozen different surfaces in the course of a single optic blast, hitting multiple targets accurately. Energy resistance. Just as Cyclops is resistant to the effects of his own power, he is resistant to his brother Havoc's power as a result of their familial genetic coding. Likewise, Havoc is resistant to Cyclops' power. Both have only a limited resistance to their brother Vulcan's powers. While in possession of a fraction of the Phoenix Force as a member of the Phoenix Five, Cyclops gained a myriad of powerful cosmic abilities. He possessed complete control over his optic blasts, interstellar flight, vast psionic powers including telepathy and telekinesis, and manipulation of the destructive and creative cosmic energy of the Phoenix. Also, even with only 1/5 of the Phoenix Force, he possessed tremendous superhuman durability, enough to easily withstand punches and tackles from Gladiator. Cyclops' optic blasts were greatly increased in power, as he was able to effortlessly match Gladiator's heat vision, as well as able to easily hurt Thor. His immense telekinetic power was sufficient to stop Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, in mid-swing with relative ease, as well as effortlessly shatter Iron Man's armor. While in possession of half the Phoenix's vast power, Cyclops was capable of simultaneously defeating multiple Avengers with a single optic blast. When he had the full power of the Phoenix Force, he was causing disasters all over the planet, and managed to punch Hulk from Australia to the United States. However, as he gained more power, Cyclops became more vulnerable to the Phoenix's corrupting influence over his thoughts and emotions. Before the final incursion, Cyclops found a Phoenix egg beforehand and raised it until it was ready to hatch. Then in the final battle of the final incursion, Cyclops once again bonds with the new Phoenix Force, but this time he has much better control with no signs of its corrupting influence. Broken optic blasts. Cyclops' mutation was altered after his prolonged exposure to the Phoenix Force, resulting in a much greater power output. His blast strength was increased to the point that Cyclops was able to briefly hurt Dormammu. Despite this upgrade in power, it does come at a price. Cyclops has lost further control of his optic blasts, causing him to overexert himself rapidly. Another side effect of blasts being altered is that he has many smaller blasts that branch off of the main blast. Instead of one focused beam, it is one large beam with a bunch of smaller ones that spiral off at the sides from the main beam, thus making his blasts much harder to dodge. Over time and more use, Cyclops' blasts return to their normal depiction and power. Cyclops has spent the majority of his heroic career as field leader of either the X-Men or X-Factor, and has developed exceptional leadership skills. According to Nick Fury, Cyclops' leadership skills are at their best in tense situations. Fury notes that the less time Cyclops has to think about a decision, the better it tends to be. Professor X entrusted Cyclops with the tremendous responsibility of leading the X-Men, sensing that he possessed a strong combination of analytical intelligence and tactical brilliance. After years of intensive training in the Danger Room and leading teams of X-Men into combat, Cyclops has evolved into an eminent strategist and battle